Good morning, early birds. Starting a little early this morning. Kind of ready to go this morning. And wanting to do a little studying actually. Felt like yesterday I felt like I need a little bit of a reminder of and a little bit more look of how I wanted to be entering in. Just thought that would be helpful going into today. Scared the heck out of you? My bad. I know I'm a little earlier than normal. Hope everyone had a good reset from yesterday, is rested. I definitely slept better last night, so that's nice. So can you really start trading futures with $200 on NinjaTrader? Yes. I mean, I don't know what the exact account minimum is. I think some people say you can, it's as much as you want. I'm pretty sure that if you deposit $100, they give you $100. I've seen that in places. Maybe it's not available all the time, so don't quote me on that. But you know, you can on the MES you can risk like $100 or $50 to $100 at the minimum. Sometimes down even honestly, a lot of times we've been seeing down to like $25. If for me in trading my strategy, that's how much I would be able to roughly start with if I was going to start over as small as possible. Just going to kind of see what things are doing a little bit this morning before I dive into a little bit of looking at the chart, like studying for entries. Why do I always stream at this time? Well, I like to start, a little bit before the market opens because I think it's important to be kind of ready to go and kind of aware of what's going on and have your levels drawn. I think it's kind of better to start early than kind of start last minute. And then, the main thing is I start. Sorry, I'm just kind of doing something at the same time. And then my main trading window is the first hour and a half of the market. So, and the main reason why I do that is because that's when the volatility is the most consistent. The reversals that I look for are the most consistent. And to me, over time, the predictability is the most consistent in that first kind of hour. After that, I find the reads and the predictability of what the market's going to do is not as reliable for me. So, and I just I don't want to overtrade and stay longer because I really believe in decision fatigue. And it's better to just stay for a short amount of time, make really good decisions during that time, and then move on. And so that's kind of really how I approach things. The whole idea less is more, and money from trading comes from scaling up, not taking more trades. Big sell-off overnight. How much are we down right now? Percentage wise, I'm just gonna look. Wow, we're down almost 3% this morning. That's some red right there. That is some serious red. Is the SPY down that much? SPY's down 1.5%. ES on a daily. That's a big candle. Well, that's definitely I think that's definitely kind of that opens the door up for testing this level, I think. Very high percentage of that. Just because, to me, I was thinking, okay, if we're going to continue a healthy trend, this pullback makes sense to make new highs off of. And the fact that we pretty much just double topped here, broke. I think this was the main support in the range, and we've broken that. 15-minute chart, shows a little better. There's a support here, I would say, but then from there, it's like the lows are the main one. So I definitely think the door is open for us to go lower. Will that happen? This is also a big sell-off, though, so we could snap back. In an unhealthy move kind of analysis, there's definitely some red there. I don't know if let me turn on a fair value gap indicator. Mine keeps breaking recently, and I don't really care to fix it because the default one is totally fine. Big fair value gap markers, and I'm sure on a larger time frame, if you go to a 30-minute, you got even more. In a 60-minute, I'm sure shows some big ones too. So definitely a spike down that could reverse. Oil's not really doing much right now. I should put the watermark on this chart. I'm new to putting this watermark on the charts, but it's actually really nice. Yeah, big sell-off. In terms of if you swap to a weekly, and I'll do it on this other one. This is a 200 EMA on a weekly. And that's like a big picture. You can see anytime we have big pullbacks, it's testing that. This one didn't even make it there. I think that would be an insane move down on the NASDAQ, but I mean, the market is overextended. If this, on a weekly, if you see this as an unhealthy move, I think if we sell off, I think we go to here. That's the logical support, on a weekly chart. That's a huge move down, but it's interesting to just, look at that stuff and try and think of, okay, what makes sense structure-wise, because, that's the previous, main support, I would say, right here. We're definitely showing some big weakness right now. But that's super big picture. That could take weeks, obviously. On the daily, I think the next target is mainly this guy right here. And then on a shorter time frame of today, I would say this is our first target. Maybe if we get a flush lower and it looks like it's gonna reverse, we can look for a long. Even if it's gonna pop up here and continue lower, capturing, from here to here is a great trade. And then, you know, if we try and pop up at the open, you can look for a short here as well, with the idea that, well, big picture might continue lower, and that could just be a quick little profit taking pop or something in the morning. You shorted the MES with one contract yesterday. I haven't closed it yet. If you're on, I'm assuming you want to close it. I mean, if you're on NinjaTrader, you should be able to see it on your chart if you have up here, if you have the chart trader on. You should be able to see this panel and have the trade. All you would need to do is click close. Or if you go to your main NinjaTrader window, I think if you have positions here, it'll come up here, and you might be able to right click, and it will give you some options to close it there as well. That's kind of the best I can do to help. I would say another thing you can do is literally call NinjaTrader support. They literally have a phone number. You just Google NinjaTrader phone number and it'll come up. And they literally have an option initially for like trade emergency help. And I'm sure they'll be able to help you way more than I can. So I kind of wanted to quickly go, this is mainly for me, but yesterday I just didn't feel super confident with, still just getting used to entering in on pullbacks. And so I wanted to re-look at kind of some of the trades. And I had this up the other day when I first talked about this. But kind of looking at where I want to be entering, just so that I can be more confident and know what I want to do. Just because yesterday I felt a little bit like I didn't fully have that. And it was, it didn't feel great to not fully have that plan, essentially. So like this is a trade I took in like this is kind of an old entry spot right here. And I want the signal to go long here was this. I like this as a bottom. So I like to see a spike like this. To me, that's a good confirmation of this bottom being put in. And then what I want to do is enter in here as it kind of pulls back and then get filled. So it's hard with some of these like very big spikes. Like yesterday we had big reversals off the lows and never got any pullback to, get filled with a good price, which was kind of frustrating, but I think that's just part of, because I'm not wanting to enter in up here anymore, which gives me a terrible entry price and risk reward ratio, I won't be able to chase essentially. But I think, long term, it's good, and I'm not doing that. Same thing here. This is a trade I took a while ago that worked out. I entered in up here, but I would rather be entering in on number 3. Like, to me, this makes a bottom. I like this. It makes a higher low here. I think an aggressive entry could be entering in here, but I think that's still a little aggressive. But this candlestick to me was a good signal. That's why you can see this little dotted line, green line, basically says I entered in here at this level. And that, again, that's a crappy, with my stop all the way down here, that's really crappy risk reward. I'd rather be entering in on essentially a 50% pullback of this, which was right here, which would give me way better risk reward ratio. And so getting used to that. And so it's waiting. It's seeing the signal and not jumping in right away. It's actually being more patient, putting in an order, and if it fills me, I get in. The nerve-wracking part about it is um, feeling like, well, if it pulls back here and I get filled, it's already halfway down to the lows. Like it feels like I'm getting in on weakness, which doesn't feel good. It feels better to get in on momentum because it seems more likely to go in your direction. But getting in on that weakness is just way better profitability wise. And with the idea that, well, I'd already be in the trade up here, I'm just getting a better price. So it's just, that's where it's just like something kind of out of my comfort zone. There was actually one trade, the trade I took from last week. Where was it? I don't think it was this far back. Thought I had it up and then because I entered in a great spot last week and I just managed it too soon, which was frustrating. Is this it? I think this is it. That's not it. It's hard to find this. Oh, actually, what I should just do is turn on trades. It'll be way easier to find it then. That's not it. Here we go. Sorry, I'm not looking at questions too much right now. Just kind of doing this I got on a little early just to do a little studying, just because I felt like I needed to do it since yesterday and I didn't have time. So this trade I really liked. This to me was the signal. It had a big candlestick that barely broke this low. We had this really nice downwards momentum that started to slow here. We had a bullish candle, and then it made one more attempt to go lower, and then barely broke that low, and then had a big bullish candlestick that broke this high. So it made a new swing high. So to me, that's saying, okay, it hasn't made a higher low yet, but it's made a higher high, and to me, that's a good signal, a good bottoming signal. And so I took essentially a Fibonacci tool, basically found where a 50% pullback was, and then took my risk reward tool and said, okay, I want to enter in there and put my stop below the low. And I entered in a trade here. And so that's kind of what I want to be trying to do, is how I want to enter in. It's a little nerve-wracking getting in before some of the pullbacks. And I think it's, because sometimes I want to wait for that, to me, that higher low, or even on the top side, that lower high is the signal, versus, sometimes it can pop up, just pull back and continue higher. But I think it really is about the big picture and where it is. And that's what helps me be more aggressive and confident in spots. Like if I'm confident that this is a good spot to look for a long, I'm okay being a little more aggressive. Versus yesterday, I felt like the read just wasn't quite there to be really aggressive. And so here, what was totally foreign to me was I got in here and it shot up and I was up 1.5x pretty fast, because the risk reward was so much better. Then, if I entered in up here, it'd take me, it'd have to be all the way up here before it was like 1x. And so normally I would, once it kind of gets to 1x, which is, usually it's like, okay, once it kind of gets moving in my favor, that's when I start to trail up. But here it was like, oh, well, it's already up a crazy amount of money. I should move my stop up and take some of that risk off the table. And so I went to break even instead of below this low. But really, it's like it was still chopping before it had really broken out. Like here, I think would have been the spot to say, okay, I should move up to break even, or here. And actually, I didn't even consider adding on this pullback, because once it pops up here, I think that's still showing, okay, it's making higher highs and jumping in again on this pullback with a good spot, you know, to go full size would have been, wasn't even something I was considering, and is something I actually should have been, versus reducing my stop. So very just interesting of changing my entry around, and you know, just figuring it out as I go, because I think you can only figure out so much. In hindsight, a lot of it matters about, you know, real time, what that's like. So that's kind of where my head is at on that. And obviously that's, you know, that's, I think that once I've kind of solidified that and really figured out, you know, each different situation of how I want to enter and use that style, I think it's just going to make my risk reward ratio in my trades, you know, P&L wise, way better. Because before it was, I mean, it basically doubles it. And I, you know, obviously I don't know how that'll play out, because you know the win rate might be changed slightly, but knowing kind of how my trading's going, that is gonna be a big improvement. So that's kind of that. I'll jump back into looking into today. As always, appreciate everyone being here. Good morning. I'll just run through quickly what I'm seeing again, and then I'll try and take questions. Mainly what I'm seeing this morning, I mean, we have a huge sell-off overnight. And so I think it's either we pop up here and sell off and look for a short off of this. I think this was a pretty good support zone based on, you know, we touched it here. We touched it here before we broke out. We spiked and hit it here. And we spiked, and, you know, it's pretty hard to see here, but we did a tiny bounce and then shot through it here. And theoretically, we came back and tested it a little. But I could see, you know, us having more of a pullback, test it, and then that being a good spot to go short. That might not happen. We might just continue lower. And so I would think, okay, we could get a reversal off of this level. This level is, I think, kind of decent too. It's basically this, the bottom of this, or the top of this like bottoming range. And then, you know, you can see here we touched it twice. So I think it's a decent spot to look for, even just a little bounce of something up here before we curl back lower. And then from there, I don't think there's really anything good until we really start to get down to here. You know, big picture daily chart wise, this is a pretty big double top, I would say. Obviously this first move set that in, and then we tested it, came back to the middle of the range here. I thought this was a good support and a good, like, it made sense to me that this, if it's going to continue higher, that's where it's going to bounce. So to me, that looked really healthy to make new all-time highs. And clearly yesterday, we made a double top, and now we're just selling off. So I think it opens the door up to hit this low. And then I think if we break this, you know, it opens the door up to down to here. Excuse me. And, you know, I think once that looks really far. I mean, crazy far right now. But I think if we break this, or if we get down to here, I mean, it's just, you know, this move, it's, again, you know, it's really not that far in reality. And you just to look at the ES on a daily chart as well. the ES is kind of doing the same thing. The ES has on a daily chart. I'm sure the news channels are noticing this, even that there's like a head and shoulders on a daily. You don't see something that crisp very often. So, I think again the door's open to testing this again, and I think if that breaks, the ES has a minor level here where we kind of chopped, but definitely the major one would be testing here. So that's kind of big picture in the smaller picture that I'm looking at. So big picture, I definitely think we have more downside, but also there's a huge move here that we could snap back to some extent. We could even just pop up and like retest this zone. We could just pop up here and then continue to sell off if we're not just going to crater here. So keeping that in mind, that I think there's definitely upwards potential on a smaller time frame, which is important because, well, I'm trading a smaller time frame. A 5 minute right now, it looks like we're just in this kind of downwards channel. So again, kind of just see how that plays out today. If I remember from yesterday because I was thinking the news was yesterday. We have news at 45 and 10 a.m. I think the 45 news is actually could cause a little bit of a spike, so definitely want to pay attention to that. 10 a.m. news isn't gonna be important, and then the rest of the week there isn't too much crazy news. Thursday morning, this will be big. This will be a big spike Thursday morning, but that's pre-market an hour before. So let me know if you guys have any questions. If you could hit that like button, I'd appreciate it. I'm trying to push the stream today. You do need to subscribe to ask questions. Kind of crazy looking at, I was looking at SpaceX again from yesterday. This thing is tanking. I wonder how far it'll go. Yesterday it was down 12%. It's basically at its opening price, or I guess its IPO price was 150, or was it 130? I don't know. Doesn't really matter, I guess. I don't really look at ES anymore. I was looking at it just big picture wise, but I don't look at it on a smaller time frame for actually trading, just because I think it's a little distracting. Trading from India, I have no idea what you can trade over there. I'm sorry. I think the main thing is, if you want to follow me, you got to try and get access to the U.S. futures markets. But I know there's people that trade the other indexes, and they have a very similar style of the first, 60 minutes definitely has good movement. Do I think the process of becoming profitable could be sped up with the information that is available now versus before, because it takes most people years? My initial reaction would be no, because, but it also could be, trading is so dependent on the person, and the biggest factor is the mental side, and you can go years in what I call like the learning loop of just jumping from strategy to strategy. I'm sure everyone here has been stuck in that at some point of you're just learning a strategy, it works a little bit and then it stops working, and then you're like, okay, I got to find a new strategy because that one doesn't work. And eventually you have to find a strategy and stick with it and realize it's not the strategy that's the problem, it's you. It's your ability to execute the strategy. And the mental side of trading, like the patience, the discipline, the dealing with all the emotions that affect you, FOMO, greed, that totally depends on the person of how long that stuff takes to deal with. We all have different ways trading affects us. And, like for me, a big one is, and it still affects me the most, is being nervous to jump in a trade and not having the confidence to jump into a trade when I'm not really fully confident in it. And, learning to deal with that and accept that it's like I can be nervous even though I should still jump in the trade, and not letting that emotion control you. So that's the thing that takes people the longest, and I think that can still take years. But I think it does help knowing that that's what you need to do. Do I live stream anywhere else that has little to no delay? You have 10 seconds no matter what you do. Yeah, because I mean, that's frustrating because right now I see a 3.5 second delay on YouTube. And it shouldn't be worse than that, If you want to, I do stream on let me try and find, if you want to, you can go watch me on Twitch instead. I stream there. I also stream on Kick. Those aren't really as much of active channels, but maybe they have less delay for some reason. Will ES and NQ be different moving forwards because it won't be buying SpaceX? I don't think so. I don't think it'll be. I mean, I don't know the timeline on when SpaceX will be bought by NASDAQ. But from it's like the NASDAQ already moves differently to some extent, at least more volatile. And I think SpaceX at some point will kind of fall into line in terms of just moving with tech stocks in certain ways. And so after the initial volatility, it'll settle down and won't cause crazy movements, I think. Lowest time frame I trade is the 1 minute. That's where I kind of actually enter in trades. Taking small daily cuts, daily losses, how do you push through that? I mean, definitely, like, if you're just on a massive loss streak that doesn't seem to be ending, well, one thing you got to try and, like, just take a break. If emotionally it's just destroying you and you feel like you can't handle it, and you feel like that's affecting your decision making. Another thing is go back to demo trading. If you were successful demo trading and switching to live effed you up, go back to demo trading, get that confidence, and realize that if you can be profitable on the demo account with your strategy, but once you switch to live money, you can't, The reason why is because the emotions are coming into it, and you're not effectively executing your strategy properly, or you're letting your emotions get the better of you. And that's, that's a part of trading. Everyone deals with that, and you just have to work on that slowly. Would I consider an overnight move unhealthy? Yeah, definitely. But will we reverse that today? I don't know. I'll look for a long. I'll go over things here in a minute again. We could totally, I think the easy target would be, if it was going to reverse, would be this level. If we somehow, faked lower, popped up, hit this, and broke through, because I think we could pop up here and then sell off. I would actually look for a short up here. Oh, I am totally drawing on another screen. Sorry about that. For the 15-minute chart here, here's the move down overnight. I could totally see us popping up to this level if it was going to give things back up. I mean, it could rocket this whole thing. That seems crazy, but we have seen that before. I think initially I would actually look for a short off of this level, because I think downtrend wise, that would make sense. We broke this major support, and so I think now coming back, it would turn into resistance and look for a move lower. But I think if we pop down here, I might actually look for a long, because we're just so overextended, we might get a snap up. If you see the mobile phone view, go to my homepage and go find the mainstream. There's technically two. So if you just see the phone view, that means you found the phone stream. Usually that's just for people that are scrolling through shorts. And if you want to, have the more horizontal version, you got to go to my homepage, and you'll find it there. Yeah, someone just mentioned the clock sync. I was having issues with that the other day, but I think recently that clock sync seemed to fix it. It'll be interesting to see actually right here if it messes up again, because ideally, no, okay, it worked right away. So it doesn't seem like something you have to do every day. Twitch is down to 6 seconds. What's better to watch on? I mean, I think YouTube is totally fine to watch on, but it sounds like some people theoretically might get a delay and don't get it on somewhere else. So, again, it's like whatever options works best for you. I stream everywhere. Obviously, if you want to look at the chat is going to be on YouTube, since that's where everyone is. I mean, at the moment, like big medium picture, I guess, is just looking at this channel on a 5-minute. That's mainly what I'm seeing today, this morning. I think if we break out of this, market's not open yet. If we break out and kind of hit lower here, I think that's going to be important to kind of see. I look younger on stream than in my profile picture. That's pretty funny. Even though that picture is probably a year old at this point. But a lot of people say I look like I'm in my mid-20s, so can't really do much. Okay, market's about to open. I'm just going to quickly run through things again for people that missed it. Kind of my bias of the day, what I'm thinking. Again, as always, welcome. I appreciate you being here. If you're new, I do this pretty much every day. If you guys could hit that like button, that'd be sick. And if you want to ask questions, you do need to subscribe and wait a few minutes. So big picture on the NASDAQ, ES also has this. Basically a double top here. I thought we were pulling back and looking like we were going to break to new all-time highs. But we've broken that, and I think it opens up the door to down here to testing this. And I think if we test this and maybe bounce, I think it opens the door up to testing the main all-time highs here before kind of this oil craziness. That to me, logically, price action wise, makes sense. We're in reality, we are extremely overextended here. On a 15-minute chart, we are very overextended from overnight. I mean, I think if I just pull it up again, we are opening, it doesn't show right now because the market literally just opened, but we were down 3% overnight on the NASDAQ. I think the ES was down 1.5%. And so that's a huge move overnight. And so, I'm pretty neutral in direction right now. I think big picture, I am more bearish, but I don't think it's out of this world for this thing to pop back up in some sense, in some direction. Either it pops up here and tests this level, or pops up here and tests this level. Thinking about unhealthy moves, this is a very unhealthy move to the downside. Even if we're going to continue lower big picture, we could totally snap up here, recover some of that, and then continue lower. Or obviously we could just continue to shoot lower if the market's just going to fall out of bed. I would think this is the next kind of support level that we kind of want to look at, is because it's these swings right here make that to me. This guy right here too, and so I think that's kind of it. Maybe we spike lower, test that, and pop up and test this area. And so I think if it's like can enter in here, capture this move of a trade. That's a great trade this morning, and then maybe even look for a short off of here, depending on what this kind of move up looks like. If it's not gonna continue higher. So that's kind of what I'm looking at this morning. There is news 15 minutes after the open that's going to be potentially kick some volatility into the market. But on a day like today, where this opening candlestick right here is over 100 points, that might do nothing. So we'll see. And so this is a big spike lower. I could definitely see us. 5 minute. I think we're kind of in this channel right now. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what it looks like if we pop up here. As always, I'm going to kind of give this thing a few minutes to see what happens. At the moment, that's a pretty nice fake lower. But just going to kind of see how it plays out. What app is this? I am trading on NinjaTrader. I use NinjaTrader for my trading platform and brokerage. If you're wanting to, start to try and trade futures, it's a pretty good spot. I've used it forever at this point. If students want to learn F&O trading, I honestly don't know what that means. Sorry. Could just be some morning chop too. Just kind of gonna wait this out and see what happens. In terms of like a spike in a trade, this is like a nice, what I would call like a potential bottom. But I think it's a little early and not fully in a spot I want to take a trade. So I'm just gonna kind of give things a few minutes this morning. Be a little patient to have the market kind of show me what's going on. Your laptop died. That sucks. I don't really have tutorials on the phone app. I just don't really use it. I'm sure there's some out there, potentially. I know NinjaTrader website has stuff, but completely missed the 1,000 drop yesterday. I mean, that was crazy to happen, you know. And the question is, did you actually miss it, or is that FOMO talking? You know, did your strategy actually tell you to enter in there, and you know chickened out or something, or because my strategy, I was looking for a short about where it's sold off, but it didn't fully set up. You know, it didn't pull back and enter. It just ripped lower. And so to me, I didn't miss the trade because to me, based on my strategy, there was no trade. You sold early. Well, did your strategy tell you to sell then, or did you just, again, like was it emotions that closed you out early? I mean, the hard part about trading is hindsight can just, you got to be careful of hindsight, you know? Is it hindsight talking, or is it actually like, if you took out what happened, what decision should you have made? It's really hard to do that. Don't get me wrong. Um, but that's what I try and think about myself is when, yesterday, right? While I just wait for this chop to play out. Like yesterday, I liked a potential short up here. Like this, I saw this and I was like, ooh, that's a good signal that this could fall out of bed. You can literally go back and stream and listen to me say that right up here. But to me, it still felt pretty healthy. And I thought there was potential for it to pop up and continue higher. And I wanted to enter in on a bit of a pullback because that's my strategy is entering in on a pullback. And it just sold off. And so for me, there was no trade. I'm not chasing stuff like this anymore because it's not profitable for me. Obviously here it would have been, but this is a very minor, that doesn't happen often. And so it's not worth, doing that or thinking about that. I'm just trying to think of like, should I have entered in here on a pullback? It's still a little early for me, but knowing that this could be, the potential uptrend could be there today. would have made sense to do that. Just with the big picture potential of if we do get going, we could pop. That's an interesting spot. I think I'd rather just wait, get a little more data. Could be almost popping up to this. Yeah, we've got some crazy volatility. I mean, we have a 200-point range already. I think it's just better to wait for a little bit, but kind of same thing with the last huge sell-off we had was all the way back here where the market opened and immediately ripped higher. Not immediately, but it did throughout the day. And to me, that saved a lot of people. Because here, there's probably a lot of people long up here thinking we were going to make all-time highs. And then all of a sudden, overnight, opening down 3%, or percentage and a half in the S&P 500. People with, normal swing trades and stuff are getting destroyed right now. And so, people like that are praying that we recover. And so if we do, they can kind of hold on and hope that, this whole move gets recovered and they go back to break even or up, right? But I think if we continue to sell off, that can create a cascading effect to where, again, it just opens the door up to extreme sell-off because people, the market's open and people will start panic selling and closing everything out because it hits, a point where they have to close either because their account is dead and they're forced, or they just, hit their stop loss. So that's something to think about for potential downside potential. But I often find moves like that it doesn't happen as often as you would think. We got that news coming in 2 minutes. Market might sit here and wait for it for a couple of candles. If my chart is ahead of yours, I don't know if you might have delayed data or something. The news is, how do I recognize that the news is going to affect it? I just look at Forex Factory. It's free. It just tells you 9:45 a.m. There is 2 news coming out, and it says right here with this little orange factory icon that it's a medium impact. And I know from watching it so many times that it can cause a bit of a spike, but it's not crazy big news. And then there's one at 10 a.m., which I know that's not really going to do anything either. So after this candle prints, that'll happen. Just kind of choppy this morning. Why do I doubt my strategy sometimes when the patterns align? Um, that's my issue to deal with, right? Everyone has their certain emotions that affect them. A lot of times mine is doubt. Right now, especially, is I am doing a lot of changes in terms of entering and being more aggressive with certain signals to try and get in on spots more often, because I do think I do spot the reversal spots really well, and I just need to improve my execution. I'm not perfect at trading. I'm just like you guys. I'm figuring this out too. It's a constant growth journey. I don't think it's. I read something last night in my journal that I wrote a long time ago, was that I think it was trading is the ultimate personal development game. Like, it's never going to end. I always thought that you might get to a spot where, oh, it's easy and you know what to do all the time. That's just not the case. And you'll get to a spot where you coast. Like, that's not the case. Like, I'm always trying to scale more, which adds intensity. And then right now as well is like I'm adding a ton of different things in terms of scaling in, scaling out, changing how I enter in terms of entering in on pullbacks, which is very outside of my comfort zone because I have done it a certain way for years. But those things, just like in trading, anytime, anywhere you're at in the growth process, is not all growth is tangible, which is an extremely hard part about trading. Is I think over the last couple of months, my trading has been getting way better. Like, with these things I'm doing, I think they will have massive impact on my trading. But P&L wise, I'm not seeing that yet. But I don't want to let that discourage me, because I know that the changes, just from looking at and knowing how this strategy works and plays out, will be very, very helpful. Once I kind of really figure it out. But, I don't really, because trading is so much about execution in real time, I don't really believe in back testing that much, in the sense of, you have to forward test, because it's really, it's about how it affects you executing it, right? And so that's something that, I'm doing in real time. Just in this kind of slow uptrend right now. That news really didn't do much. I mean, didn't do anything. This was the news candle. Didn't look like it did anything, but that's kind of how news can happen on volatile days. Is it's just a little blip because there's already enough volatility. Almost like we're filling this little 5-minute fair value gap here. Definitely, I want to try and make this support level here a little bit more focused, I think, on this low. Just reducing that size a little bit there. I'm hindsight thinking about this entry right here a little bit. Just thinking about, was I distracted talking about something? Because I did like this spike lower. But it is pretty early in the market. But I have been getting more comfortable with getting in early. There's been a couple trades or spots that this has made sense to enter in on. But too late now for that. In terms of like next spot, I mean, I definitely want to see if this pops up here and see how it reacts up to here. Because we could be getting just a little bounce, you know, some people call it a little dead cat bounce. And then, you know, the big picture selling could come into play. I mean, this channel we're in didn't really get broken by this. It kind of did, but so we'll kind of see. Yeah, I'm another thing of like this is like getting, for years I've just been like, okay, I'm waiting 15 minutes no matter what, and I'm starting to get to the spot where I'm like, okay, I can start to recognize where it makes sense to jump in almost at the market open, but it's very specific. Just waiting now. Not much to do right now, I think, until we pop up here. And if we get like a little overextended, you know, I definitely think that looks decent. Don't forget my drink. Yes, I got my bowl size mug. This short up here is going to be interesting because, you know, big picture, this is potentially a bottoming pattern. You know, in terms of momentum down, and then we went into a channel. It's kind of it's starting to slow. But I would think, you know, it could just rocket. But another potential is it pops up, pulls back, and then goes higher. You know, on a 15-minute chart, that makes a little more sense in terms of a logical, like, price action. And so that could be, you know, even if I get in short up here and it does that, I think there's still, you know, what that would look like is, you know, maybe a good target would be like a 50% pullback. And so that could put it, you know, down to here somewhere, you know, pops up, pulls back, and then continues higher. And so if I get in a short up here, I'd still have time to get out at break even, I would say. And then, you know, maybe if it pulls back and sets up down here, could look for a long. I think it really depends, because I think, you know, trying to be very neutral with and open-minded with the idea that I think this does have the potential to go either direction. I don't have a great read on direction in terms of one specifically. I'm just more looking at, okay, this is a decision point, right? That's what I like to try and think about the market. because then I'm ready for either option and it doesn't catch me off guard if one happens that I'm not really looking for. And in terms of overnight highs, you know, we're pretty much testing those right now. I mean, this is in terms of just giving this little move up, we've done that. So the easy money is done right there. And we could sell off right here in terms of this downwards trend. And you know, give this back up. So I definitely want to be aware of that. You know, we're kind of getting to 10 o'clock, that reversal timing. It kind of being in this uptrend. I mean, I don't want to short right here. To me, it's you know, maybe if we give this back up in a meaningful way, but there's not really, this to me doesn't look like this kind of, there's not that huge flush up and huge reversal to put in a really strong stop right here. I'm not really seeing that kind of candlestick price movement right now. To me, this just, it could just be a pullback. Because it's really just pulling back to right here. You know, that's just like right now, we're just stair stepping. You know, it popped up, pulled back to here, popped up, pulled back to the previous high. You know, just retesting right now. I'm going to remove this downwards trend, at least on a 1 minute. I think one more pop looks better, especially if it gets a little more overextended. And if we double top here and break this low, I think to me that would be more of a signal that I'd get in on a pullback. Because right now it's not in a great spot that I'm super sold on. You know, to me this trend looks like it's going to continue higher. I'm just kind of looking at where these are. I'm going to mark this actual high from the overnight just to know exactly where that price is. In terms of checklist, I mean, I think we got, it's not a super unhealthy move here. We got minor news coming out here, but it's mainly just the 10 o'clock kind of reversal timing that I'm looking at. We just touched that overnight high and broke it by a couple ticks. Just thinking about if I was in this trade long, I would not be out of it yet. In terms of just thinking about this trend continuing, there's no reason to, if I was long, to get out yet. It just looks like it's just stair stepping up. Just looking to see big picture here. Just kind of looking to see essentially just how we react to this spot. Are we going to come up here and test it and then sell off? Or is this kind of bigger bottom that's going to pop up here more? Just because we broke out the zone doesn't mean we couldn't, just top out here either. Just going to clean this up a little. Seems like the trend is more like this right now. Another little minor spot is kind of this from the overnight. Annoyed you didn't take this long? I am a little too. But again, like trying to think about it in a positive learning experience. Um, I'm just not as used to looking for longs right at the open. That's not something I always do. Potentially liking this if it sells off. But for me, that's just a reminder. Hey, I need to be more engaged right at the open, especially. I mean, I saw this as a bottom. Like this did trigger in my mind of like, hey, that's actually if it's gonna bottom, this is a good spot. This shows a good stop, which is how it opened and just ripped like this. And so trying to just always going forwards of hey, on a not every day it's good to do that, but on a day like this where it's a fake lower could turn into this. I need to be more keyed into that, right? And be more locked in at the start of the market open, and that's not something I'm used to doing, and so I just don't do it as often. But it's something that I need to get better at, clearly. And so I always try and reframe things in a positive light, because otherwise just you're just going to beat yourself up and it's not productive. This looks like it's getting a little overexcited here. Could be a little double top. I think it double tops and pops here. I would look for a little pullback to get in. Oil is going to drop. I did see that it was breaking this major support. We'll see what happens. This isn't really showing a great topping pattern at the moment. I think I'd want to see it sell off here a little bit to really put this into play. Because otherwise this looks like it's just flagging out. And it's going to continue higher. Took 2 trades in perfect spots and then knocked yourself out too early. It happens. I did that last week. I had a trade that went 4x and I knocked myself out at break even. It's, that's the hard part about trading, is because every day and every specific instance is slightly different. And so trying to get good at being able to deal with the average that gets thrown at you is, it just takes time. And the market, right now is not easy either. So it looks like it's trying to top out. I don't want to get in short yet. I want to see, to me a signal would be kind of a break and a pullback. I want to see it kind of show some weakness first. That's kind of just how I'm looking to do things right now. And then I would get in kind of on a pullback, something like this. Five-minute. The reason why I wanted to get short up here initially is because I think this is where the bigger picture comes back into play. I think it just bottoms here. It's not really showing enough weakness. But I think the risk reward here is actually pretty dang good for me to get in on a pullback here, even if it's like pretty low chance. It just really seems like it just wants to bottom though, like that. Just do a pullback. I think I'd rather see it pop up. Because it's not really showing me a good flush signal right now. It's really just chopping, and that's not a signal I like. And those are usually like my best signals. Like down here, this was a signal. Like that flush was a good signal. This right here isn't really doing that. I want to see this pop and reverse. That to me would be a good fake higher. And if it does that, that to me looks a lot better. I almost had the wrong hotkey. I'm kind of wanting to get in on right here, but I'm trying to wait for, what feels like my new entry style is waiting for it to fully recover this, and then do a little pullback and I jump in. Because really we're starting to just sit in this range. Part of me thinks I need to just get in small size just to get something on the table. This is where it's so easy to just read into these funky moves. When it's just not quite there. It's in that gray area where it's very easy to just, I think, FOMO in, because it's just very easy to doubt what's going on. I think I'm just going to wait it out to see if it just looks like it's flagging out at this point. I'm going to try and back up so I don't. Looking at a 5-minute. Still could be setting up. It's just not showing a good setup right now. It got really close. But I don't want to FOMO into something over, being a little frustrated about missing the long this morning. At this point, it's broken this uptrend, which is good. And it could just do one more pop and then do something like that. But I think seeing on a 5-minute, maybe a lower high on a 5-minute would be good, since it's kind of being a little slow. Or seeing it pop here, break this. I think that would be a good signal. Seeing it flush, break this, look for a pullback, jump in, get a good price. Tricky market. I'm not sorry for missing questions, but just trying to focus. Because I think it's definitely in a decision spot. And so I don't want to, disengage. And if it does set up a short, I don't want to miss that. But it's definitely going both directions right now in terms of signals. And so I think waiting for something a little clearer is better, in terms of a flush in one direction and seeing what that happens, or a break of a new high and seeing what that does. When it kind of gets to a choppy range, I like to wait to see it break out one of the directions. Because otherwise it's very easy to read into the candlesticks too much. $10.30 is kind of like the next timing that the market's been reversing at. So we're kind of getting somewhat close to that. We'll see. But right now it's just turning into a chop fest. But in terms of like a 5 minute, I mean, this is a nice move to try and look to have it give up. Big picture, I mean, that seems somewhat unhealthy to me. If you look at a 15-minute chart, there is a fair value gap on a 15-minute chart. And so we might, do this for a minute, maybe make a spike and then go lower. It's still testing this area. Even though I don't have a zone, we're not in this zone. I think anywhere here is definitely a spot where it could reverse. You can always find a time frame to support your bias. Yeah, that's a huge thing of why I don't think you want to move time frames. You want to stick to certain ones. Like I always use the 15-minute, the 5-minute, and the 1-minute. And I don't change those. Or, different charts. I mean, it's always, you can always manipulate the chart to fit what you want. And so that's why I try and have a very neutral bias of thinking about signals for both directions, of like, oh, what's the reason why this would continue higher here, and what's the reason why it would go down here, because I think that helps mentally keep me as neutral as possible and open to that anything can happen in trading, because it can. Now, one direction would be looking for a trade in one, I'm only looking for a trade in a certain direction, but like I think here, if I was trying to just be only biased to the short side, I probably would have entered in short here versus seeing this as more of a long signal or the potential for just kind of a slow grind higher. And that took me out of it from entering in there. Just weighing this out, seeing if this spikes lower. We did just touch this. Okay, there's a little channel we're in now here. I do want to take a short up here. Depending on how much this pulls back, I'll either put in just an order right away or wait for a pullback. Might be a little aggressive, but I think the risk reward is pretty good. I like this kind of as a spike, potentially putting a top here. And if it just spikes me out, I think that's okay. I think this is a spot where I want to look for a short. Gonna remove these. Big picture, there's not, I might just be, I'll think about it later if I just FOMO'd in there, but I like this as a spot. I like that as a spike of kind of changing things. Could it totally just, rip higher off of this? Yes. That felt very fast to jump in there and impulsive. I did not really like doing that. But I felt that this did put in a signal of a potential top. I think if it puts in a pullback here and breaks and pushes lower again, maybe I scale in again on a pullback. Again, I'm trying to lean into the more bigger picture of I like this as a potential top to give this move back up. That's what I'm looking for here. And I want to kind of, I want to at least see it come back down to here. If we just stay in this, if we just stay kind of choppy here, we'll kind of see how it plays out. We could pull back here and go up. But I think big picture, I like this as a spot. I think looking for a little bit of even a lower high on a 5-minute, that might be where I'd want to scale in. Versus right here, it feels like it's still very much in that initial decision point. And if we just shoot lower, so be it. My risk reward is insane right now, which is very weird to me as well. That's what's a struggle for me about this new sizing in, is like this was a very tight, aggressive entry. And you know, it's like I'm already at 2x, but like the move I'm looking for is much more down here. And so we could pop here, pull back, get to here, and then continue lower. So, you know, I want to try and look in for a spot to scale in versus moving my stop. Last week, I made the mistake, I would say, of moving my stop too soon, right? In terms of like a head and shoulders, like it might just do something like this. It might pop up to here and continue lower. I don't think I want to scale in yet on a pullback because I think there is potential for this to just do this. I kind of want to see how this develops on a 5-minute. I think that's the confirmation I want. Or if it has a big spike here of a bullish candle and reverses, then that's another signal to me. But right now, if this plays out and it goes down here, even at half size, massive trade. Just with how choppy it is right now, I'd rather be a little more cautious with sizing in again, especially since I got such a crazy entry there. And it's hard because a lot of times in the past, I would be scaling out at 3x as a target. And really, I want to be trying to use the swings and kind of reading because I'm getting in sooner, my risk reward, I think, you know, down to here is way bigger. You know, if this kind of gets going, right? Now we could be pulling back here and moving up. That's big picture is the potential for sure. I mean, off of this high, basically. Just trying to find out where that is. I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, like right here. This is definitely the support we need to break, I think, to really continue lower. And so I think here, if we're going to continue lower, makes sense to have a pullback there, at least some kind of bounce before going lower. And I don't want to go to break even yet to, you know, get knocked out of that. It feels kind of crazy being up this much and then still allowing it to come all the way back on me. But again, my risk reward, I think, is going to be a lot higher with these changes to where, you know, I'm risking this to still look for this right now. And I'm just not going to be looking at chat while I'm in this because I really want to just, this is a very new style for me in terms of entry. And so it's very intense. And so I just need to really focus on taking deep breaths and making sure I'm, you know, executing it how I want to and being really locked in. And I don't think, you know, if this bounces here and knocks me out, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't want to do anything yet with this. You know, 5-minute picture, it's like we could still, 5 minutes still looks like it totally could. It could come up here, make a lower high, and continue lower. Main thing is I'm looking for this to slow down and potentially give this back up. Pretty nice fair value gap here on a 15-minute to give up, I think. That's kind of the magnet I'm using as an unhealthy move. I'm trying to remove, I'm doing an update to remove this because I don't really like having the dollar signs. I'd rather just think of R. But, you know, if we get down to here, I think, let's see, 29,800. The fair value gap is to here on a 15-minute chart. I think that makes sense for the easy money. And I think depending on how this play moves out down to here, I'll scale out a certain amount. So, oh, I think I just put 60R. I don't need 60. So this is kind of just getting going here. I think once we break this, you know, it does open the door pretty good down to here. I think a little bit more I'll go break even, but I think this is pretty solid of a spot. If it does this, I think I'd want to get out. So I think at this point I'm going to go break even on the trade because it's broken this support where I would assume a pullback's going to happen that could fake me out. You know, and if it pops on a 5-minute, you know, we could be, there's this. This is kind of the next support, I would say. And we could totally, you know, hit that and move up. So that's not a spot I want to close out or anything, but that's just what I'm watching on the way down as, so I'm ready for a potential pullback and to see what that looks like. And again, I don't, you know, I'm up 2K, but I'm trying not to think about the money. I'm thinking about catching the move, right? And to me, the move, there's nothing telling me that the move is going to end yet. And that this big picture is, you know, there's possibilities, but I don't think closing anything out here, risk reward wise, like scaling out half, is necessarily what I want to do yet. But that's also a part of this process of doing this in real time is, oh, if it kind of goes, you know, I mean, if it goes 3x in my favor, do I just scale out half, you know, with a limit order, especially as I figure things out to just put some profits on the table, feel good about things because, you know, obviously getting 3x is a great number. And then letting the rest kind of really go for what I'm looking for. That might be something that I might want to do with risk reward like this. But, you know, generally how I try and manage is based off of the price movement until this thing really, if it really started to rocket, then I would be more tight with the stop. But right now it's just kind of showing, you know, downtrend. And so it's just holding through some of those pullbacks. And if it comes up and knocks me out at break even, you know, that's okay. It's you know, I'm more focused on the learning process right now of dealing with these changes in real time than the money. You know, because size-wise, I'm very small right now compared to what I'm planning to be in the near future. And it's a lot more about figuring this out in real time, with obviously some money on the line. Because right now on a 5-minute, I mean, it looks pretty dang good. Again, we could still bottom here. I think if we break through this, it definitely opens this door. This is definitely the major support right now we're dealing with. But this pullback right here, you know, we might double bottom here and pop up. That's totally possible. Let's see, I can break this into 8 and 3. You know, I'm thinking about, do I want to scale out some here? Because this does look like it might double bottom right there. And if it just shoots up and knocks me out, you know, that's again, like figuring out these things in real time of how I want to do it is just part of my process. And so I think maybe I could have pulled out some here. That would have been the spot that made sense for this double bottom. But if it pops up here and sells off, I'd almost think about adding on, but it might just be too far away from my stop at this point. That is a big spike. And again, there's a lot of things that managing in this way is not necessarily the right thing to do, but again, that's just me realizing a lot of this stuff in real time and figuring out, okay, how do I want to deal with these spots? Because a lot of these spots are very, you know, I don't want to just get sucked into looking for a home run, right? Like you don't want to do that either. It's definitely about like finding a middle ground of like, okay, do I want to scale out some at 2x or 3x? Or depending on where it is, like if it's at a spot where I think big picture it's going to bounce, do I scale out there? You know, there's so many situations that can happen that it might make sense in this specific situation, but over time, it's actually not the right decision. So just kind of waiting to see if this tops out here or just knocks me out. Might as well just move my stop below this because I think if it breaks above this, you know, might as well get at least $100 or something. I don't think I really want to add on. That's tricky. Maybe I'll add on if it pops down to here and does a 50% pullback. Because to me, this is a nice fake higher. Again, I want to be adding in on fakes. Like this to me now looks like a trap to the long side. And so in terms of adding on, which is very weird for me to do here, you know, what does that look like? This is interesting that my tool is doing this. I've never seen it do that before. That's kind of annoying. I don't know if it's doing that because I'm in a trade right now. But that might just be a big ass trap. It might just shoot lower, and it doesn't look like I'm gonna get a pullback to size in. But I think if it did, that is potentially a spot where I would do it. And then just to pull this back up in my normal amount. Now here, you know, thinking about, oh, should I get out at 3x at least some? I don't think so now because this is such a, I want to see how this plays out. This is such a big spike. I mean, I still might get this pullback. If it pulls back to like here. No, it looks like it's just going to shoot lower now. Still looks good on a 5-minute. You know, again, the easy money is down to here. In terms of the fair value gap, I would say. I think I do want to trail up half though at this point. Just because it is at that 3. I might try and see if I can just get filled here at half. I'm a little late on it. I'm just going to close out half at 3x just to, you know, put something in the piggy bank. And, you know, if this, it's funny because I was almost thinking of adding on a pullback right here. But again, I think just as I'm very new to some of these changes, you know, that can be something in the future date, but I would way much rather, you know, just get something in the piggy bank to help, you know, it helps build some of that confidence, right? Things have been challenging recently, and just getting some good profits in, I think, are smart. In terms of trailing, I think I still think this has a potential to pull back right to here. I want to see this pullback. I am confident that this is a really nice trap. So I'm okay with this stop. I can, you know, pull it down a little bit, right? But I'm okay with that stop being right there. I think this is going to get going here. And I think I'm just going to take these R's off. Oh, I guess I can't. Oh, just put a 6 down here because I think this is where, I mean, really my target's down here, I think, for the easy money. You know, the main thing on the 5-minute is giving this move back. You know, this is that little pullback I'm looking for. It does look like it can go either way right now. But I think, again, trying to sit with the big picture, knowing that my stop's in a good spot if the trade is going to be done. I don't want to, there's no reason to let myself get chopped out by some choppiness here. When in reality, like if I move this away, like this is a pretty nice head and shoulders pattern with, you know, some downside to give up. You know, this is that 50% pullback spot where I was almost talking about adding on. I'm not going to because I actually scaled out. It would be silly if I scaled out and then added on. It just doesn't make sense. But I think once this breaks and gets going, if it does, then I will start to trail. Because I think at that point, it'll be, okay, this is a nice pullback. I can trail down to this. And I can start to kind of see some structure building. But right now, it's like, it's just working lower. There's really no signal to get out yet. You know, I think breaking a new low, I can move my stop down to here now. I think if it just pops here and pops up, I think it is showing some funkiness at that point. But to me, this is a logical 50% pullback of that flush. I'm looking at the 5-minute on another screen. Again, also the 15-minute, the target here. I think the target of the easy money is this fair value gap. And so I'm looking for it to give this up. On a 5-minute, that's, well, I've drawn this line from that, pretty much where that easy money for that fair value gap is. And that's all the way down here. It doesn't mean we couldn't keep going to the pre-market open or the market open. And if I have like what makes sense as a good trail stop, I'll just let it do its thing. I'm just thinking back to the entry of when I jumped in here and it almost knocked me out right away. that felt so foreign. Um, Obviously, in hindsight, it was a great entry. Um, will it have worked every time? I don't know. But it was, I saw that signal and trusted it, especially with the main big picture is what um, I'm trying to focus on. That's what I try and trade off of is the big picture because that's, where these kind of tops happen. And then trying to, the smaller picture is just kind of more the entry. I'm trying to think about scaling out here, because we're again trying to not think about, okay, down here is, 5R. I haven't had a 5x trade. Obviously, I scaled out 3x, but like hitting that big of a R, I haven't really done in a long time. Usually it's a crazy move, but because I'm doing tighter stops, it's theoretically this is the new norm. And how I would manage this is, again, is just looking at the candlesticks. And to me here, like we're breaking lower. There's maybe a spot here. Like I'm just thinking about, okay, what does the pullback look like? I think pulling back to here where we kind of broke this low, I'll just pull this down a little bit. Like pulling back to this, like that seems totally logical, totally in a healthy trend. I think if we start to get clearly overextended, then I'll definitely trail up tight. But I don't know if we're quite there yet. Because this, we topped out, we really chopped around for a little bit here, and now we're starting to accelerate. And I don't, I'm trying to think about, okay, what does that acceleration look like? And how do I manage it if it does, this, or if it just bottoms here, or if it does just continuously print lower candlesticks. And again, knowing that my easy money target is this line right here. Because big picture, if you look at this, this could be just a pullback. And actually, if I look at a 50% pullback of this move, we are right at it. And so we could totally bottom right here, big picture wise. And so I'm not going to let this thing run all the way back on me, but I think it's methodical enough. I have to let it move up to here, see if it continues lower. And if it looks like it's going to double bottom, I'll move my stop here because that's what kind of happened up here. Again, thinking about my risk reward as it continues throughout the trade of, okay, if my target is here, and frankly, I think it's like, well, this could still go down to here. I'm risking, let's say this to still make this, it's like, how does the risk reward change as I move my stop? And maybe I could move it to here. That's kind of what I'm looking at is like, okay, if my risk reward is like this, my stop's up here and the trade is currently here. Well, there's 2R or 3R down to here. If I think it's going to continue down to there. Because this, on the day, I would say this is the more major support area. Because my risk reward is, it's constantly changing as I move my stop and the trade, hits certain levels. And so again, this is, I think frankly, I'm looking at, I think, trailing up pretty tight soon here. Because I think it does have the potential to bottom here. Got a little bit of funky movement right there. I think trailing up, I like to see a spike higher here and see how that recovers because that can put in a nice little top. And if it's just going to spike out of nowhere, that's just a risk that happens, you know? Just kind of waiting to see how this plays out. You know, I did move my stop down to here. It could spike up. It could do this and lower, but I'm out on the trade there. So tricky spot of thinking about where I want to manage. You know, maybe I should have just stayed with the swing because this is really where the good stop is. But this kind of pullback here, I think, does open the door up higher. And knowing that we are bigger picture, you know, this is that 50% pullback level. So I don't know. Let's see what things closed out at. So pretty much 2K. That's basically 3x on the trade. Because my risk was basically 700. So got 3x on it. Obviously, I'm totally happy with that. And very good learning experience in terms of just the entry and then also just managing it, but then also seeing kind of how things play out. You know, big picture, we gave back most of this move. Now we could continue lower. You know, hindsight, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have been at this high because a spike could totally do this. You know, we didn't really necessarily break this downtrend, but you know, that's hindsight, right? So I guess I can kind of quickly talk about entering the trade a little bit since obviously that happened so fast. You know, main thing was just this move up, like cutting those candles out. Like to me, this move up did have a nice chance to reverse, especially in this market we're in right now. It's very back and forth, and we hit this level. You know, we were kind of hitting, there was a major kind of support here of just hitting this kind of main area. This was just kind of more accurate. Oh, we just perfectly touched this. And then, so that was kind of the big picture. And then, bummer to see that, but you know, it happens. This is kind of why I'd like to go with the swings more and like wait to see how these play out. And sometimes it can just spike. But knowing that this, you know, it did do this spike earlier, maybe I should have given it more room, but whatever, you know, it happens. Can't trade everything exactly perfect. And then, you know, kind of, I think to short this thing is it felt like we were kind of in this uptrend. There's actually kind of this uptrend too. But I didn't like this, and it kind of popped up here and then made, to me, this was a good little flush that just tested this. And so that to me was a signal to jump in. And so I jumped in on this pullback here. I think actually, if I pull up the trade right here, and it went against me pretty fast. That is horrendous with the text on the screen. And then, you know, and then just waiting things out. I didn't move my stop after this up to here. This thing did do a pretty scary double bottom. I scaled out some at not quite 3x. And then the rest here looks like it got out at pretty much 2x. You know, it was hard. I trailed to the high of this big candlestick because sometimes those hold. Obviously, in hindsight, I should have just stuck with the swing. I mean, that's just the safer play. I think it was a little bit of nerves of not wanting to give more up. But you know, this is a volatile downtrend, so you know, it's hard to let this thing come back that much, thinking that, well, it'll continue lower, because now it's like, okay, stop could definitely be here. I think could move the stop here again. but you know, that's just part of things, right? Um, it's not about managing it perfectly, because it could still bottom here, just make kind of do this, and it's, you know, it's more about capturing a chunk of the move, right? That's the most important thing. But you know what? I'm happy that I jumped in on that when I saw it, you know. Had a little frustration over not catching this, but again, this was right at the market open. That is kind of new to me. And here it was also same thing of pushing through the nervousness. Like I felt gross jumping in on this. It felt very, very foreign. But you know, pushing through that, you know, was just something I had to do. So yeah, in terms of scaling or trailing this more, I don't know if there was really much more to do. You know, it's hard to hold a trend like this, honestly, when it has big whips like this. So sometimes it's just, you know, even if this is going to go all the way down here, it doesn't mean that it's easy to hold, you know? Sometimes, you know, sometimes I'll have a wider stop and it will bite me in the butt, right? I gave way too much back. And other times like this, it's like, oh, I should have had a tighter stop or a wider stop, because, you know, if it runs all the way down, you know, hindsight, right? Not everything is going to be perfect. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to be done with trading for the day. Definitely pretty low on the decision fatigue, or high on the decision fatigue at this point. And I don't think, you know, this was the move I was looking for. At this point, I don't know where the market could go. Big picture, you know, I think it could go either direction. You know, kind of why I got out is because the easy money was over, and I think we could, if we're going to continue higher, this makes sense as a little pullback, or big picture could come into play and we just continue to sell off and have a big move down the rest of the day. But at this point, you know, my hour and a half is of where I want to trade is over. Yeah, it definitely, when you're kind of on it does feel good to catch a win. When last, you know, few weeks have been frustrating and hard. And that's, you know, that's sometimes what I was kind of talking about earlier in the trade of like, oh, should I just scale out at like 2x or 3x just to get a little, you know, money in the piggy bank? And that's, I think, that's an okay decision to do sometimes. If you're doing it consciously, if like, you know, that mentally, you know, maybe if it's like, oh, if it sells off here and I should have just held, you know, but you don't know that, right? It's good to sometimes just put something in, to get some of that momentum and confidence back, right? Trading is so momentum based sometimes, I feel like, and doing whatever you can to get back in that pocket is really important. If that's like taking time off, resetting, or just, you know, taking some quick wins. Yeah. How do I define the top and bottom of reversal areas? I will say, if you go to my YouTube channel, I do have a video that fully goes into drawing reversal zones. If you just scroll down to my homepage, this video will go into way more detail. But just to quickly answer that slightly is, you know, generally it's well, I guess this level that I used here for this was on a 5-minute, right? And it's essentially saying, okay, well, the top of this, I want the actual high here, and then the low is much more subjective. I mean, it could have been here. The main thing is it's coming into the area. And so that's the thing with levels. It's very subjective sometimes, but generally I like to capture the top of the previous swing, and then depending on what kind of the movement up there looked like will help kind of extend how I draw that zone. But obviously, It's very subjective. That video, I would watch that video because that definitely goes into a lot more detail. Will I post a new NinjaTrader video on my settings? I actually posted a new video last weekend. So if you go to my videos, it's the most recent one. This is the micro NASDAQ. I just do it because it allows me to scale in better and scale out. At my size, I would be trading 1 to 2 NASDAQ contracts, normal size. And so, trading the minis just does not make sense. You don't understand this. I'm assuming you're talking about this second blue band. I put that there because of this high and this kind of breakout pullback. And to me, this was not a spot I'm going to look for a trade. But as I'm managing, I like to see these to say, okay, we might run into some support here. And so I should be ready for some kind of pullback and ready for that, how I, manage it. Just trying to see every potential spot in the market. The Ninja script, I don't know what you're talking about specifically. A lot of people ask about my risk reward tool here. This is an add-on. There is a link for it in the description below. Do I think $150 is enough to start trading this strategy with one contract? On the MES, let's actually go see if you looked for this same trade on the MES. I'm assuming it's set up very similar. And you tried to risk, let's say $50. You entered in, stop above this high, entered in somewhere here on this pullback, you could be risking $36 a trade. On the NASDAQ, it's like double the size. And so I think it's harder to do this on the NASDAQ in a small account. Like if you entered in the same spot I did, I traded 10 contracts, so you would be risking about $80. So I think it's a little small. But, I would always suggest practice first. That's why, so then you can get a lot more understanding and then start to risk some money. And the brokerage, the platform I suggest for that is what I'm using is NinjaTrader. I highly suggest it. You can find a link for that in the description. Do I think it will continue lower? I think so. But, again, I'm not taking a trade. The risk reward tool, I don't give out for free. What's my win rate this month? I think it's probably about 50%. But obviously, like with changes right now and stuff, that it's definitely worse than what I would like it to. And that's why I'm not really trying to focus on it too much, is because I know I don't want to focus on it because I know that's going to affect my trading and make me focus on the results. When right now, that is not what matters to me. What matters to me is getting used to entering in this style that I'm doing, and getting better at managing it, knowing that the amount I'm up in these trades is way higher than normal. Like last week, I had a great entry on a trade, and I knocked myself out too early because I was up more than I'm used to, and that just messed with me mentally. And I got out at break even when I really shouldn't have, and the trade, obviously, it went in my direction well. So I do stream pretty much every day I trade. I think it's pretty much 4 days a week now. I was doing 5, but it was too much for me. And so trying to, find something that's sustainable for me, because obviously streaming all this live puts a ton of pressure on my trading. and I'm new to it for the last, I think, 3 months now. And it's just another process, it's just another part of what I have to deal with, and I'm just getting better at. So I'm pretty much streaming 4 days a week, trying to do Monday to Thursday. And I start, 30 minutes before the market opens. So I think at this point, that's kind of it for me. If you have any other questions, go to my YouTube channel. I have, a NinjaTrader tutorial. I have futures explained videos if you're new to futures. And I also have, YouTube videos that discuss my strategy more, explain it in a lot more detail so that you can, if you're interested, you can come in tomorrow and understand what's going on. And so these I just scroll down on my channel and watch this playlist. This will give you a ton of information on all that. Bummer to kind of see this, obviously, as I literally just got ticked out on this. But again, that's just part of the process, right? I don't want to get gobbled up by hindsight. And so, that's just a part of the process, right? You're not going to manage it perfectly every time. So appreciate you guys being here as always. I will be on tomorrow, 30 minutes before the market opens roughly. And, looking to do this again and again and again. So that's all I got. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.